He's not pulling away because he's overwhelmed. He's pulling away because there's someone else standing in the space where you used to be. So before you spend one more night replaying every conversation, wondering what you did wrong, wondering why he goes quiet, the second things start to feel real, wondering why his phone never sits face up anymore, and his explanations always sound just a little too smooth. I need you to hear this. The signs you've been noticing were never about his attachment style. They were about her. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel like you were chasing something that kept slipping just out of reach, drop a ghost emoji in the comments right now. And stay, because what I'm about to walk you through is the kind of thing most people only understand once it's already over. Once the damage is done and they're sitting there thinking, how did I miss it? Here's the truth, there is a specific repeatable pattern that avoidant men fall into when they're hiding another woman. It rarely looks like cheating. It looks like emotional distance. It looks like a man who just needs his space. It looks like personality. And that's precisely why it's so effective, because you can't fight a diagnosis of he's just private the way you can fight a lie you've caught red-handed. So let's break the pattern down piece by piece until there's nothing left to misread. Sign 1. He becomes unreachable in ways that feel almost reasonable. This is usually the very first crack you notice, and ironically, the first thing you talk yourself out of. He doesn't vanish completely. That would be too obvious, too easy to name. Instead, he becomes selectively unavailable. He answers some texts and lets others sit for hours. He picks up some calls on the first ring and somehow misses others entirely, even though his phone was right there in his hand 10 minutes earlier. He's present just enough that you can't call it neglect. He's absent just enough that something low and quiet in your gut starts to stir. And here's the part that makes it so disorienting. He always has an explanation. He was tired. He was slammed at work. He needed to decompress after a long day. He didn't hear it buzz. And taken one at a time, every single explanation sounds completely reasonable. That's the design of it. It was never meant to be one obvious red flag. It's 100 tiny yellow ones, spaced out and softened just enough that you keep waiting for the full picture to appear before you'll let yourself trust what your body already knows. An avoidant man who is hiding someone doesn't go dark. He goes dim. Just enough light to keep you from walking out the door. Just enough silence to keep the other woman comfortably in the shadows. And what happens to you in that gap between what he says and what he actually does is maybe the most painful part of this entire cycle. You start filling in the blanks yourself. You start auditing your own reactions. Am I being too needy? Too sensitive? Too much? You catch yourself apologizing for wanting something as basic as a returned text within a reasonable window. Slowly, without ever agreeing to it, you shrink yourself down to a size that feels acceptable to someone who never actually had room for you to begin with. This is not a you problem. This is a pattern, and it has a name. When someone uses selective availability as a control mechanism, what they're actually doing is managing two emotional worlds at once. They dole out just enough attention to each person to keep them engaged, but never enough for either person to see the whole board. And here's the cruel irony. The exact trait that makes avoidant men so hard to fully connect with, their natural emotional distance, becomes the perfect camouflage for a double life. Because how exactly do you confront someone for pulling away when pulling away is simply who he is? You don't, you can't. And on some level, he knows that too. So instead of confronting it, you wait. You give more of yourself, hoping it'll be enough. You make yourself easier to love, quietly believing that if you just need a little less, he'll come all the way back. But he was never going to come back from exhaustion or overwhelm, or the weight of some deep, unspoken complexity. He was going to come back from her, and somewhere underneath all the second guessing, you already knew that. You just didn't have the language for it yet. That's what this is, giving you the language, because awareness isn't just knowledge, it's leverage, it's power. And you deserve to see this clearly, without the fog sign. 2. He guards his phone like it's holding state secrets. Let's be honest about something most people won't say out loud. In a relationship where both people are genuinely secure and genuinely faithful, a phone is just a phone. It sits on the table, screen up, completely unremarkable. It charges on the nightstand without any ceremony around it. Nobody flinches when the other person's eyes happen to drift toward the screen. The phone is boring because there is nothing on it worth hiding. But when an avoidant man is quietly managing another connection behind your back, that same phone transforms into the single most protected object in the house. And it doesn't always look dramatic. It's rarely him lunging across the couch to grab it before you can see the screen. More often it's quieter than that. A habit that crept in slowly enough that you can't even pinpoint when it started. He always has it in his hand. He takes it into the bathroom, every single time, without exception. He flips it face down the second you walk into the room. His screen brightness stays permanently low. He angles his body slightly away when he's typing. He changes the subject if you glance over mid-scroll. He clears his notifications more compulsively than you ever have. He sets a new passcode you've never seen before and calls it a security update. None of these things, taken alone, means anything. But you are not experiencing them alone. You're experiencing them layered on top of each other. Layered on top of the emotional distance. Layered on top of the plans that keep getting cancelled. Layered on top of a gut feeling you've been trying to talk yourself out of for weeks, maybe months. Here's what's important to understand about the psychology underneath phone guarding in avoidant men specifically. Avoidants already carry a deep baseline discomfort with emotional exposure. They were private before you ever met them. So when they add an actual secret on top of walls that were already there, it becomes almost impossible to tell the difference between his natural guardedness and deliberate concealment. That overlap is exactly what makes this sign so uniquely painful to sit with. You've spent months, maybe years, training yourself to respect his privacy, to not be that partner, to give him the benefit of the doubt, to trust him without needing proof. And now the very discipline you built in order to love him well is being used against you because the message he sent early on was unmistakable. I'm a private person, don't push, don't pry, give me my space. So you gave him the space. And in that space, quietly, he built something you were never meant to find. Pay attention to how your body reacts the next time his phone lights up across the room. Notice the tightening in your chest. Notice whether you want to look and then immediately feel a flash of shame for wanting to. That shame is not your conscience telling you you've done something wrong by being suspicious. That shame is someone else's guilt, redirected onto you so smoothly that you've started carrying it as your own. You are not paranoid. You are perceptive. Those two words get confused constantly, and they are not the same thing. Sign 3. He pulls you close right after pulling away. This is the most confusing sign of all 5, and it might honestly be the reason you've stayed as long as you have, longer than logic alone would ever justify. Here's how it plays out. He disappears for a stretch. He goes cold, distant, hard to reach. You start to pull back too, not as some calculated strategy, but simply because you're worn down, confused, and quietly bruised by the inconsistency of it all. And then, right as you hit the edge of your patience, right as you start seriously questioning whether this relationship is even real anymore, he reappears, warm, attentive. He texts you good morning without being asked to. He starts making plans again. He looks at you the way he used to, back when things felt simple. He says something specific, something that proves he was actually paying attention, something that reminds you exactly why you fell for him. And relief floods through your whole body, because the person you love just came back to you. But he didn't come back because he missed you. He came back because something shifted on the other side. This is the cycle. And once you see what's actually driving it, you won't be able to unsee it again. When a man is running an avoidant attachment pattern alongside a hidden relationship, his emotional bandwidth rises and falls based on what's happening in both worlds at the same time. When things are going smoothly with her, when she's meeting his needs and the excitement is still alive, he has almost nothing left to invest in you. You become background noise, an obligation managed at the lowest possible cost. But the moment there's friction with her, she pulls back or gets too close, or the dynamic turns uncomfortable, which happens in every relationship eventually. He suddenly needs something stable again. He needs you. He returns to the relationship that feels safest, because it's the one where he already knows you'll take him back in. You are not his priority. You are his emotional safety net. And this is exactly what makes the intermittent warmth so psychologically powerful. The human brain responds far more intensely to unpredictable rewards than to consistent ones. It's the same mechanism behind slot machines. It's the same mechanism behind trauma bonding. When affection arrives in unpredictable bursts instead of a steady rhythm, your brain starts working overtime to earn it and hold on to it. The highs feel more intense because the lows were so low. The warmth feels more meaningful precisely because you spent so long shivering in the cold, waiting for it. This isn't love, it's a loop. And if you've spent months, maybe longer, riding that loop and calling it complicated, I want you to sit with that word for a second. Because complicated is often just the story we tell ourselves when the actual truth is too painful to say out loud. He isn't complicated, he's divided. Sign 4. He starts narrating a life you're not in. This one is subtle, and most people don't catch it until they look back with fresh eyes. When an avoidant man is hiding someone else, he starts casually referencing experiences, places, and moments that don't line up with any timeline you actually share. He mentions a restaurant he tried recently, one you've never been to together. He brings up a movie like he's already seen it, but you never watched it with him, and he never once mentioned going without you. He drops a phrase or an inside joke with the ease of something familiar, and it means absolutely nothing to you. He describes his weekend in vague, broad strokes that don't quite match the details you already know. He seems unusually light about certain topics and strangely heavy about others, and he can't quite explain why. He volunteers information at moments that feel slightly rehearsed, like he's covering a story before you even think to ask a question. And when you do ask, gently, without any accusation in your voice, he deflects, sometimes with irritation, but more often with vagueness, a quick pivot to a different subject, an answer that technically responds to what you ask while leaving you with more questions than you started with. This reveals something genuinely interesting about how the human mind manages deception. People are not nearly as naturally skilled at lying as they assume. The brain has to work considerably harder to maintain a false narrative than it does to simply tell the truth. And one of the places that extra strain shows up is in the small, offhand stories we tell about our own everyday lives. A man hiding a second relationship is managing two parallel timelines at once, and no matter how carefully he tries to protect both, cracks eventually show, in the form of details that don't belong to your shared story. He's living a life on the side, and every so often, almost by accident, that life leaks into yours through one careless sentence. An unfamiliar name mentioned once and never again. A shift in his routine he explains a little too fast, a little too smoothly. And you notice. You notice because you pay attention. You notice because you actually care. You notice because even while your mind is working hard to give him the benefit of the doubt, your instincts are quietly keeping score in the background, the whole time. Trust your own score. This is something people get backwards constantly when it comes to emotional intelligence. We're taught to question our own feelings, to fact-check them, to withhold judgment until there's hard, visible evidence. But feelings aren't irrational noise, they're information. They're your brain's pattern recognition system processing the situation faster than your conscious mind can put words to it. When something feels off, it's because something is off. The visible proof might not have surfaced yet, but your nervous system has already done the math quietly in the background, long before your conscious mind caught up. Sign 5. He makes you feel like your needs are the problem. Of everything on this list, this is the one that does the deepest damage. This is the one that lingers long after the relationship is over. This is the one that makes you wonder, sometimes for years afterward, whether there's something fundamentally wrong with you that makes love so hard to hold on to. There isn't. But let's talk about exactly why he needed you to believe there was. When an avoidant man is hiding another woman, he runs into a very specific emotional problem. He has to manage your growing discomfort and suspicion without ever admitting to what's actually causing it. He can't tell you the truth, so instead, he reframes your reaction to the truth as the actual issue. You notice he's been distant, so you bring it up gently. And somehow, instead of a real conversation, you find yourself defending your right to even bring it up in the first place. He tells you that you're being too sensitive. He tells you that you're always looking for problems that aren't there. He tells you that your questions feel like a lack of trust and that it hurts him. He says he feels suffocated when you ask too many questions. He says he needs someone who can give him space without turning it into an entire event. And because you love him, and because maybe somewhere along the way you've already heard that you can be too much, and because avoidant men have a particular way of delivering these lines with just enough calm, just enough quiet sadness, that it never quite registers as cruelty in the moment, you start to believe it. You start monitoring yourself, holding back the things that genuinely bother you, pre-editing your own feelings before you're allowed to say them out loud, making sure they're small enough to be acceptable. You stop asking certain questions. You stop bringing up certain topics altogether. You get smaller and he gets more comfortable. Do you see what just happened there? Your discomfort, which was completely legitimate, rooted in real signals your body was picking up from a real situation, got quietly rebranded as a character flaw. You were handed responsibility for managing an emotional dynamic that he was the one. Secretly creating this has a name: Davo, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And whether or not a given man is doing this on purpose barely matters, because the effect on you is identical either way. You stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting your own instincts. You stop trusting the exact internal compass that was working overtime the entire time, trying to protect you. This is why this particular pattern does the most lasting harm. Not because it's the clearest sign that something's wrong, but because of what it quietly takes from you. It takes your self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation underneath every healthy relationship you will ever build after this one ends. So if you've spent time in a dynamic where your needs were consistently treated as an inconvenience, hear this clearly: you were not too much. You were too aware. And that awareness threatened someone who needed you to stay confused, because a confused partner doesn't ask the questions that would end things. Sign 6. He rewrites the story the moment you bring up the pattern. There's one more layer to this that rarely gets talked about, and it's worth naming on its own, separate from the reframing we just covered, because it operates a little differently. This is the moment where, after enough of these conversations, he starts subtly editing the history of your relationship in real time. You bring up something specific, A cancelled plan from 3 weeks ago, a comment that didn't sit right, a pattern you've noticed building. And instead of engaging with what actually happened, he tells a slightly different version of it. That's not what I said. You're remembering it wrong. I never agreed to that. I said I'd try. Small edits at first, nothing dramatic enough to call out directly. But over time, these edits accumulate into something bigger. A quiet erosion of your ability to trust your own memory of your own relationship. This is different from him simply denying wrongdoing. This is him rewriting the shared record so that the version of events where he looks inconsistent simply stops existing. And the reason this works so well on someone who genuinely loves him is that you want to believe you might have misremembered. You want the benign explanation to be true. So you let it go, again and again. And each time you do, the ground underneath your own perception gets a little less solid. If you've ever found yourself keeping a mental list of, "No, I know that happened, I'm not crazy," screenshotting texts not to confront him, but just so you have proof for yourself that you're not losing your grip on reality, that's not paranoia. That is a person quietly documenting the truth because someone else has been working consistently to blur it, bringing it all together. Selective unavailability, a phone guarded like evidence, cycles of warmth that only ever follow withdrawal, a life running in parallel to the one you thought you shared, your needs reframed as flaws, history quietly rewritten when you get too close to naming the pattern. These are not 6 unrelated behaviors that happen to show up in the same man. They are a system, and they function together for one purpose: to keep you perpetually off balance, to keep you questioning yourself before you ever get around to questioning him, to make the relationship feel like something you have to keep earning, rather than something that simply quietly holds you without conditions. Real love does not require you to shrink to fit inside it. Real love does not punish you for paying attention. Real love does not make you feel unstable for noticing things that are actually factually there. What nobody tells you about the aftermath. Now I want to talk about something almost nobody covers when they talk about this topic, and it's the part that actually matters most once the pattern has been named: the emotional aftermath. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Even if everything I've said tonight has landed somewhere deep and specific in you, even if you're nodding along recognizing every single one of these, knowing something and leaving something are 2 entirely different mountains to climb. There's a reason you've stayed this long. It isn't weakness. It isn't naivety. It's the neurological reality of what intermittent reinforcement does to a human brain over time. The hope cycle is real. The moments of warmth genuinely felt real while they were happening. The version of him that occasionally showed up, the one who looked at you like you were the only person in the room, who said the thing that made you feel truly seen, that version was real too. He just wasn't only showing it to you. But here's what I need you to hold on to through all of this. The love you felt was never the problem, your capacity to love deeply, to see potential in another person, to stay through difficulty instead of running at the first sign of trouble. None of that is what betrayed you. Those qualities are not flaws. They are exactly the raw material that will build something extraordinary once they're finally placed in the right hands. The problem was never your love. The problem was the address you kept sending it to. And that is something you have full power to change. Doing that requires getting genuinely honest with yourself about what you've been tolerating and why. It requires sitting inside the discomfort of uncertainty instead of reaching for the familiar ache of someone who keeps you just close enough to stay perpetually confused. It requires slowly rebuilding the self-trust that was dismantled, sometimes over years, inside a relationship that needed you not to fully trust yourself in order to keep functioning the way it did. That is real work, and it doesn't happen in a single night, no matter how clear this pattern now feels to you. But it starts exactly here, with seeing the pattern for what it actually is, not a relationship that's almost working, not a person who almost shows up for you, not a connection that almost feels like love if you just squint at it the right way. A system whether built intentionally or not, designed to keep you available, keep you guessing, and keep you from ever asking the questions that would end it. The real question. You know the pattern now. You're equipped to ask the real questions. And here's the thing. The most important question left isn't even about him anymore. It's about you. What do you actually want from love? Not what you've been willing to settle for, not what you've learned to be grateful for in small, rationed doses. What do you, in your most honest and unguarded self, actually want from someone who chooses you fully, consistently, without conditions attached? I want you to genuinely sit with that question. Write it down if that helps you think clearly. Because that list, the clear, honest, uncompromising one, is the new standard you use from this point forward. Not his comfort level, not his timeline, not his capacity for openness on his best possible day. Your standard, built entirely from your own needs, honored without apology and without negotiation. You spent a long time in this relationship managing emotions that were never yours to manage. You spent your energy trying to become easier to love for someone who was quietly directing his love somewhere else the entire time. You gave patience, grace, understanding, and the benefit of every single doubt available to give. Now turn some of that back toward yourself. The same emotional intelligence you poured into trying to understand him, decode him, and reach him, that exact same intelligence redirected inward toward your own healing, your own clarity, your own future, is the most powerful resource you have. You are not broken, you are informed. And that distinction changes everything about what happens next. If any part of this reached something real in you tonight, something you felt for a long time but never had the words for, drop a single word in the comments right now. Just one word that captures exactly what you're feeling in this moment. That's all. And if you want more of this kind of honest, clear-eyed emotional insight, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next video goes even deeper into the patterns that keep us circling in loops we never consciously chose to walk into. You don't need all the answers today. You just need to be willing to look at what's already true. And you already are. That's exactly why you're still here.